Victor Sankara, welcome.
Thank you very much, Fred.
I have George Ngaire.
Thank you very much for having me, Fred.
And today we have Nelson Omoyo.
Thank you, Fred.
What in the world is happening? I mean, Sudan has recalled its ambassador to Kenya. And the Sudan is really, really angry with what is happening. And you can remember when President Ruto was suggested as a possible candidate for the peace process in the Sudan, there's one faction that refused and said this guy is, he has a side he supports. What is happening?
Okay, Fred, you know Kenya in the recent past has always been known as the diplomatic hub. Kenya has always had a diplomacy based on stability, peace, and respect of human rights. Mm-hmm. But now, seeing after President Ruto took over, our foreign policy has been very disastrous. Because when you look how we interact with other nations, it seems like we are just doing some roadside declarations without thinking that these things that we say or we posture have international ramifications for our country. Because right now our foreign policy is not even coherent. You see, our president is hobnobbing with people of questionable characters from other countries, hosting rebel movements. Because the other day we saw the Congolese rebel movement being launched here in Nairobi. Then after that we saw the RSF, which has been fighting the Sudanese army for power. Mm-hmm. They are coming in Nairobi to form a parallel government, and our president is allowing that because he's friends with one of the warring groups like RSF. Mm-hmm. So, and this is not something that just started the other day. Because even if you remember, the first thing that President Ruto did after ascending to power, after being sworn in as the president of Kenya, President Ruto revoked the Sahrawi Republic from being a part of our diplomatic corps. This is something that is worrying.
He revoked the what?
He revoked the recognition of the Sahrawi Republic. Imagine just one day a president wakes up and decides that we no longer recognize this country as a legitimate country. Then he sends his ambassador back to the country without even putting in place the reasons or anything else. You know.
Let's just touch. Let me bring in everybody, and then we get into it. Omoyo, please. What do you read in this?
I think, and my colleague has mentioned about the Sahrawi, which was the first diplomatic, the first mistake on matters diplomatic that this government made, and as we have gone through these times with this government, we've seen the personality of Ruto being questioned even in international platforms. And you've mentioned that during the peace talks, that one side mentioned that this person might be having interest. Mm-hmm. Then this is the person propelling our foreign policy. And you see, there is a difference between how we approach our foreign policy from his predecessor. See, his predecessor, Uhuru Kenyatta, might have been different based on maybe his background as a political scientist, maybe a son of a former president, but we've diverted from how we approached foreign issues to now where the president is the center. He seems not to be getting advice from diplomats. Actually, even his appointments on diplomats is so different. You see, someone like Kenyatta will appoint, yes, friendly faces friendly faces, but will make appointments based on merit. See, the first mistake when when Ruto made the declaration about the Sahrawi Republic, they had to recall PS Twitter to come and try to massage the African Union, because it was contrary to what the African Union stood for. See,
what do you read, Gaira, before we start looking at the ramifications of the same?
You know, Fred, Kenya's foreign policy hasn't changed. It's the character who's leading the current now that is trying to alter it. It still remains.
You're saying that the foreign policy has not changed?
Hasn't changed, Fred, because Kenya still remains the only sanctuary state of the East African region, because all the other 6-7 countries are in battles, and it's the only place that now we have refugees from all those countries that are battling there. We have the highest refugee camp, the largest refugee camp in the country, because of it's almost 1 million people, you know, between Kakuma and Dadaab, and we've always said we have other amorphous refugee camps around the town.
Living
they're living around
the
east side of the town.
Yes.
So the policy hasn't changed, because that's why we have all these institutions running humanitarian programs that actually should be done in the countries where the problems are. You know, the Sudanese problem ought to be handled by UNICEF or UNHCR in Sudan, and same to Congo and Somalia. But you see, they're doing it they're all operating from within the Kenyan territory, because that is what has been provided over the years. That hasn't changed, Fred, because I've said it many times that when you go to our foreign office, they are shocked at what is happening at the executive. The experts that are at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because you see a president in France with Macron condemning the attack on Ukraine, then next week he announces he's attending the Russian-African summit somewhere in Moscow. You understand? It doesn't make sense, because it just tells you that, and maybe to disabuse what you're saying about advice, I'm telling you, we have some of the smartest people in the office of the president who know what is supposed to be done. Yes. But we're dealing with the character of an individual who's struggling in between running a country and achieving personal goals. You know, this was a villager who made it to the top, and he's trying to be a global superstar. You understand? Sometimes you want to, Fred, sometimes you go to ceremonies that you find the kind of buffet that you never see on daily basis. So you're trying to catch up with everybody else. Yes. You understand? Yes. So we have a president who the foreign policy has never changed, Fred. It's just the character of the person who's running the country.
So what maybe where we can start so that we know whether it's changed or not changed. Yeah. Do we even know what Kenya's foreign policy is?
Okay, Fred, you see, the Kenyan policy is something that is always midwifed by the Foreign Affairs Ministry. We have a PS, Mr. Korir Sing'oei. I may not like his English of the nose, but this guy is also not doing justice to the Foreign Ministry, because he's made gaffes of monstrous proportions that even some people wonder if this person really is supposed to be the top bureaucrat in that ministry. Because how can a foreign affairs PS share fake videos of CNN saying that what Kenya is doing is right? Then the same CNN says we don't have such a clip. Another gaffe is when he shares a press statement supposedly from IGAD. Then immediately IGAD says that we have not issued such a statement. How does this say on the standing of our nation? Because a PS is something whose words carry a lot of weight. It's not just a roadside declaration that someone can say elsewhere, then we ignore it as such. Something coming from the foreign ministry should be something that can be...
It's credible.
Yeah, it's credible. But now when you see things like this happening, it means that we have a problem there at the ministry. But then, it's not just Korir Sing'oei who is making these mistakes. Even the president himself. Our president, we know he wants to come through for his friends. He wants to come through for Hemeti, his friend. He wants to come through for the king of Morocco, who is also his friend or business partner. And we also know that he wants to support his friends in the Congo. But at what At what point do we differentiate between personal interest of the president and national interest of our country? Because now when the president goes ahead and makes statements, you know, the president is our figurehead. He's the figurehead of the nation. Whatever he says, it's taken to be the position of Kenya. Because now when the president says...
What statements has he made that has gotten us in a bad standing?
Okay, the statements like, we stand with Ukraine. You know, diplomacy...
Are you saying that he should not take a stand? Okay. Because Ukraine was invaded, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ukraine was invaded, yes.
If you were the president of Kenya and Ukraine is the situation we have in Russia, Ukraine existed, what would you say?
As a president, you need to be smart. See, it's the image of your country that.
So what's the smart thing to say?
The smart thing is to always stand in between. Do not choose any side.
So
because
it's okay. So that
the problem.
how do you walk that middle line?
The problem, you see, like we had an interest of the AUC seat.
Yes.
There are members of the BRICS in the AU. They will vote. If you say you stand with Ukraine, Russia is the leader of BRICS. What happens? A large part of SADC, which is led by South Africa will lead them to not vote for you.
Yes.
Then you lose that seat. When you go to the drawing board, you'll see you had made a mistake. What's the smartest thing to do?
You just keep quiet. There's war going on. Ukraine Russia has invaded.
Silence in diplomacy means a lot. Doesn't mean that you might not be supporting the processes, but you don't declare it in public.
Now, if you can remember that time, Ngaira, when Russia invaded Ukraine,
yes.
Ukraine is the largest exporter of grains. So we started suffering. The price of grains shot through the sky. If you were the president,
when you asked about foreign, what's your foreign policy? President Uhuru Kenyatta in the previous regime really attempted to shape our foreign diplomacy into economic diplomacy, that Kenya is only interested in people who want to trade with us and give opportunities to us. That means that when you look at a shitty country like Haiti, which has no social, economic or political value to our country, it might be terrible that they're suffering, but it's supposed to be none of our business, so you mind your business, you understand? But when you look at a country like Ukraine, where we believe that part of our wheat deficit, specifically for wheat, because much of maize and maize we kind of try to grow enough for ourselves. But you see, rice and wheat is what we import a lot from other foreign countries, and in particular in places like Ukraine, that is a country of interest because there's a benefit that comes to this country. You understand?
Yes.
And so President Uhuru Kenyatta really tried to mainstream that. So that's why whenever he was asked as to whether Kenya faces west or east, he said we are facing forward with business partners. And that's why for those that bring offer to the table, that's why if you walk into this country, Fred, you can see the face of China in almost everywhere.
And if you interject,
you can
you will also, if you talk about the conflict in Ukraine and Russia, you'll talk about grains on this side, you'll also talk about gas and oil on this side. So if you decide to make sides, then you suffer.
And I'm saying, but you see, that's a general statement. That president was trying to champion an economic policy where he was saying that we only engage in matters that benefit us and not people that benefit us. So when you have a country fighting between Congo and Rwanda, it's supposed to actually be none of our business, much as he's part of the East African community. Because when you look at the economic value, Congo has a much bigger economic value to us than Rwanda because it has over 100 million people. That's a big market for us to sell. Just like Ethiopia, when you take Congo and Ethiopia, those are 200 million people. We can do away with Burundi, Rwanda combined. 8 million people, 4 million, 5 million in Burundi, have just 15 million. It's just a province in Congo.
Yeah.
So when you look at the market size in terms of what you want to distribute, it makes every sense to work with President Tshisekedi as opposed to working in Rwanda. There's nothing that we get from Rwanda. Rwanda is relying on our human power and our technology and many other things to survive.
Yes.
So it should be a secondary thing. But you see the way this president has aligned himself. It's not very clear as to how President Uhuru Kenyatta did it. That's why I've told you.
So President Uhuru Kenyatta's foreign policy was economic,
and he aligned, and he did say many times that we are only going to align with people that are benefiting us. That's why countries like China and Japan, who are willing to partner very much. Fred, from here to Mombasa, you can see the face of China and Japan. If you land in Miritini and you see the Dongo Kundu project and the airport corridor and the one that goes to Kipevu port, and those interchanges are being done there. They're being done by JICA, which is Japan, because it's willing to partner on things that benefit us. And he was able to really tap into that. It's like you walk into a room and you realize those 2 people out of 10, these are the 3 that really care about me. So you'd rather spend more time with those 3 than the other 7 who are not benefiting with you. So it was a very clear thing. So that means that then, whenever there are issues across the country, which would happen as it would in a family, and you could be a father and you could have children, kids might not agree with each other, but they're both your children. You sort of try to keep a neutral face to allow them to be able to reconcile and only come in if it's necessary. You understand? And if it's at extreme level. And that's what ought to have been done by Kenya. But you see, this president is not doing that. He's intentionally meddling himself into cases. Like the story of Haiti really pains me, because I know what it means. There are 627 Kenyan sons and daughters who have been taken to Haiti for nothing. There's absolutely no benefit that you're going to have from that.
As a country, we get
and nobody
nothing.
If a $31 trillion country like US, which is next to Haiti, doesn't care about Haiti, why should you come 10,000 kilometers away to come and medal for that? So it's not the problem. I keep telling you, my brother, if you go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because our friends there, they are shocked at what the president is saying. You understand? It's just because of this, what you call the big man syndrome, which is the one thing I have said we need to be able to contain this issue of a powerful presidency, just like the way South Africa has done. Because in South Africa, they've kicked 2 presidents and even jailed 1, and the country moved on. Until Fred, we jail a president, hopefully we begin with this one, is when the future presidents can learn the consequences of making such grave mistakes. Because there are countries where if you get involved in the kind of things this president has done, it's impeachable in every way.
Now, what interest would Kenya have in Sudan?
Okay, Fred,
Are we interested in their oil? Do they have gold? I'm trying to understand what interest our country would have in.
Well, first, nations actually interact not on the whims of the leaders or their feelings, but on the strategic interest of every nation. Because right now, when we align with a nation, we need to look at what are the mutual benefits that the other nation is getting from us, and what are we getting from them. But in this case, we see that our president is having personal interest with some factions in the Sudanese government, because even this RSF, it's also part of government. It's just like the government are split into 2. But we hear stories that this Hemeti is a serial gold trader, and our president might have interest in the Sudanese gold. That's why he's friends with him. And it's also rumored that this Hemeti gave President Ruto money to campaign. That's why now our president is...
we can't go that direction, because if I'm told
I'm using the word allegedly, because even if you look at today's Standard newspaper,
yes,
Hemeti has been mentioned as the biggest gold trader in Sudan. So that one might bring the line of the economic interest that our president is having. But these economic interests, are they in line with our national interest, or they are just in line with our president's own business empire? Because you see, when you are dealing with warring factions, and a friend of your enemy actually becomes your enemy. So what about if Sudan decides to bomb KICC, where a parallel government is being formed? What will be the assurance of Kenyan securities? Because these guys have long-range missiles. What if they decide to bomb that place and say that we are putting a stop to these shenanigans going on in Nairobi? People forming a parallel government in Nairobi. To stop it, we'll need to bomb that place. What about the Kenyans who will be caught in that melee? Again, in our day-to-day association with other nations, we also need to know that other nations also view us from the president's perspective. When the president is said to be a puppet or something, it's a straight indictment to our nation. Because right now on the Haiti issue,
yes,
we have no strategic importance there. But the only reason is that the president is friends with the Americans, and that's why they are using him to go and keep peace in Haiti, of which is not even a peacekeeping mission. It's just a mission to stifle the voices in Haiti who wants the Americans to leave their minerals alone. So it's actually a matter of how is the president's utterances affecting our stature in the community of nations. Because even when you look, the most recent thing that happened that is still being discussed, the failure, yes, the failure of Raila Amolo Odinga to clinch the AUC chair. Because Fred, I still
you want to say that was actually brought about by the foreign policy that we are currently practicing right now?
Yes, because...
Let me bring Omoyo and then I come back to you. Do you agree with that? That the failure of Raila Odinga to secure the AUC position is as a result of the foreign policy that this government is practicing right now?
I will partly say yes, and that is, and I'll say that as a country, we might be pursuing something different from what our president is pursuing.
What do you mean? As a country, we may be pursuing something different?
In branding our country. Right now, I think if you are conversant on what's happening in the country right now, we have Magic Kenya Golf Series. We have a lot of golfers from the international space golfing here in Muthaiga, branding the country, and that's part of the partnership that the KGU and the professional European professional golfers have. And that's branding. That's citizen approach of how we brand our country, our diplomatic relations between citizens. But you see, our president is pursuing a different approach. I think he wants to be seen as very charismatic, more of a Patrice Lumumba in Africa.
Give the guy credit. The guy is
more of an Obama presidency, but an African president, and he really, like my friend said, really pursuing things that do not have. If you look at it, the economic value it has, the interest that we might be having as a country, you might not see the sense of heading to those directions. And probably that is what has costed us. And you see, also, as a country, you are, you see, have you seen people in the village? They're having funeral at their home, but they're heading to other people's home to console with them. Yet, in their home, there's a kin of them.
You have a funeral at your home, But you normally go to your neighbor's
to your
place
neighbor
them.
to console them. I think we are in that situation.
Yes.
That Ruto has not seen the problems that we have internally. And you see, Raila was not a candidate, the government candidate. There are people who sat and saw that this person might be a good chairperson of the AUC. Then they approached him, talked to him, convinced him, hey, you can vie. The only thing the government did was, because this guy is part and parcel of us, we need to brand him in that space, because Ruto will be voting, because he'll be sitting at the assembly as a president. You need to mobilize the other presidents to vote for him. But you see, the personality of this person has been questioned in many spaces within where members of that assembly sit. So probably that costed us big.
Gaire, foreign policy, Raila, lost?
Absolutely. I think we had that debate here, and we confirmed the way the dynamics of how the African presidents vote and the African countries and the way Africa is divided based on global interest, which is what you're calling the Francophone countries and their relationship with French and other European countries, of the Muslim countries, and how they come into play with what is happening in the Middle East, and the SADC countries who had a candidate, because the Madagascar guy is a SADC. Madagascar is part of a SADC, so they had interest. Those are 16 countries, so obviously there's going to be a factor there. But Fred, I wanted to say something very quickly. You know, Mohammed Hamdan was born in Darfur, and he grew up there, class 6 dropout guy who then started trading with Kamal, a local vigilante. And so when President al-Bashir wanted to contain the rebellion that was coming from the Darfur region, which is where it's a mineral-rich region there, he needed to create a local militia that is off the police radar, that can be able to act politically for him in that local area. And he found a good ally in Mohammed Hamdani, and they terrorized that region for a very long time. And that is true. Very true. And terrorized that Darfur region for a very long time, which led to hundreds of thousands of people being killed. And after that mission was done and he was able to contain that region, the Mohammed Hamdan and the group, it was a rapid support force, the way they call it. And actually that's how even President al-Bashir called it. They were supposed to contain the noises, the way M7 likes to say there's some noises somewhere there. They're supposed to contain the noises in Darfur. Yes. And when Mohammed succeeded to contain the noises there, by in one way or another, he had created his own internal force locally, because then there was being sent arms and equipments and food. So he had been able to create a team that is armed and that can confront the system. Yes. And for sure that's what happened, and they ended up overthrowing the same al-Bashir, who actually picked Mohammed from the village and made him a military junta, you understand? Yes. And there's one footage that is unforgettable, the day they carry him and take him to court in a cage. Even myself, I couldn't believe it. I'm sure it was running in his mind. And he was wondering,
I need this guy.
I can't believe these are the very people that I met them. Fred, that's what happens when governments or presidents or regimes make the blunder of wanting to rely on what you call militias. Because the difference between the militias and the police is that the police are what they call the disciplined forces, is because they are contained, they are trained, they are numbered, they know where to locate him on the stations. But you see, for a militia, you just supply guns, but you don't know who has them. You understand? And so when there's a fallout with that, most governments never fight. You had, just quickly, the allegations that were made by the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, when he said there's a team that is operating off the police structure. Yes. And even went ahead to name a name, said Abel. And then somebody showed up and said, why are you defaming me? You know, Abel, there are too many Abel. I also have a cousin called Abel. Yes. But some Abel showed up and he said, you're defaming me. And even I think there was a lawyers later. I don't know if you saw that. Yes. You understand? That means. So you wonder, okay, how do you know I was talking about? How do you know? Because the deputy president was very specific. He said this guy is on a certain floor. You understand? Because and when he came up to complain, he actually alluded that he's a former DCI officer who's now a civilian. You understand? So it almost buys into what the deputy president is saying. And when you look at how they picked Kizza Besigye from Nairobi all the way, Kizza confirmed on media and said they went through immigration. You understand? Yes. How do you pick up almost a president? Yes. You know, by stature. by stature.
Yes.
Is admissible. He's not somebody that will come and then you just say, you can pass.
He's not like our cameraman, and he will just disappear.
Yeah.
This is Kiza business.
Yeah. And you know, they went through immigration. It means there was a group that then is being allowed to operate off our security structure, Fred, which is a serious indictment to what you call national security.
Yes.
That means somebody can come and actually commit a terrorism act and go away. In Rwanda, what caused the civil war is that somebody bombed the presidential plane. A lot of people forget that.
Yes.
And you know how massive that is. Some character could just come here next to Mbakasi and take out a plane. Then you dump this country. And you can imagine how they've handled it. So my point is this, Fred, that it's unfortunate that our president has so much gotten himself concerned with personal glory and how he becomes an international superstar at the expense of how our country operates. Yet our country is operating amongst other countries whom, for us Kenya to be considered a successful nation, for Fred, we have to be a country that produces and sells to the world. You understand?
Yes.
Countries like Germany are very small countries, but because their manufacturing sector is very strong, because for you to have a strong economy, you have to have a very strong manufacturing sector.
Yes.
So they have companies, and they have, say, Volkswagen, and they're able to produce 1 million units, and then they sell them worldwide at $10,000 a minimum. That's $10 billion. Is what KRA collects in a year from one company.
Yes.
They are strong because of that. Now, if you have too many enemies out there, it means even if we produce the best products in the world, we'll not even be able to do that.
Yeah.
Now, you can imagine the countries that surround us. Somalia is at war. Ethiopia is at war. Congo and Burundi and all this countries. The only country that is not at war is Tanzania and us. Now, if you get ourselves very much concerned, and these are countries that we share borders all through, you can imagine what the pushback could be like. Somalians will be bombing us from this side, the Congolese will be doing it from the other side. I think the president needs for a moment to take a seat back and think and ask himself whether the country or him comes first. And if he feels like he comes first, then he should leave us in peace. Yeah, so that we can do something else.
So what ramifications should we look at now that we have already meddled with DRC? We've meddled with DRC, we've meddled now with Sudan. And we've told the people who've sought refuge in this country, that you're no longer safe. You know, I was speaking to a South Sudanese gentleman, we friends with him, mutual friend.
Yes.
And he told us from long time ago, there was a silent code within the Kenyan intelligence that as long as somebody is in Kenya, no spy systems from other countries would harm him when he's here. And the intelligence in Kenya is very strong. They would know who is here, what the person is doing. And if the intelligence knew that you've sent people to come and harm somebody in Kenya, even if he's a rebel in your country, they would come and take your people. And they tell you, listen, you can do whatever trash you want to do in your country, but as long as somebody is here, you don't touch them. That's why Salva Kiir and what's
Riek Machar.
And Riek Machar would live in Kenya, and their families are in Kenya. They would not kill one another, but when they go out there, they would kill one another. But right now, we have meddled and muddied that water, because Besigye came here, he was taken out. We've had other dissidents being taken out from this country and taken to their country to face trial.
Okay, Kenya has always been a safe haven for people who are escaping persecution in their countries, especially political persecution. But with the trend nowadays, we see that it's no longer a safe haven as it used to be. We saw the 4 Turkish nationals being taken from Nairobi and being deported back to Turkey while they were under UN refugee arrangement. We also saw the Tanzanian activist Maria Teshai also being picked here in Nairobi, and then Kizza Besigye, the long-time opposition leader of Uganda, being abducted in the streets of Nairobi, then being taken to Kampala, where he's is facing a military court system, of which the military court system has been overruled by the judiciary, but the government is still hell-bent on going on with that. So you see, these are things that dent the image of our country. Even other countries will start viewing us as people who cannot be trusted with anything. And that's why when we come to the AUC election point, you see, Raila the candidate, I still hold the view that he was the best candidate to run our African affairs. Him as a candidate, he was the best, even among his peers. He was head and shoulders above them. But what hurt his chances was the shambolic manner in which Kenya is conducting our diplomacy. Because Fred, imagine you are a democratically elected president, then you turn on your TV and you see a rebel movement launching in Nairobi, and this person who is the president of that country is supposedly the mediator in that crisis. You can imagine. Again, you are a government like Sudan. President Ruto is now the chairman of the delegation, which is supposed to be negotiating for peace amongst you. But you see, he's friends with your rival. He's even arriving at the venue with him from the same plane. Again, he's giving him room in Nairobi to launch a parallel government. But then he comes back and says, no, we should not conflate issues. Let's not mix issues. I'm here to negotiate. Even if it were you, will you give him an ear? No. Absolutely not. So our president is putting us in a very precarious position. Because even during these campaigns for AUC, we saw that Raila Odinga was enjoying support from the Southern African states. But what changed overnight? It changed because, as I told you last week, the soldiers who had been sent there for a peacekeeping mission in Congo,
the South
Africans, 13 of them had been killed by M23, the same movement that was launching in Nairobi.
Yes.
So even if you are the South African president, you've been friends with Raila Odinga for a long time, you want to support him, you want him to be the AUC chair. But back at home, even the military generals will tell you we can't support a country that is supporting our enemies. Look at these soldiers who have been killed. How will we tell their families that, again, you want to support the same people who are causing harm to them? So you see, this is a completely bad thing that our president is indulging in.
So basically what you're saying, because the Congolese Rebel Alliance also incorporated the M23. In fact, the M23 leader was here.
Yeah, General Makenga.
Yes, was here when they were launching that. So Kenya is part and parcel of the problem that the DRC government is going through.
Kenya is part and parcel of the problem. However, maybe it's because we've been misread, and maybe from the proclamations of our president. You see, IGAD, though headquartered in Djibouti, will always have their meetings, peace talks, here in Nairobi. So Nairobi has been very significant about peace, mediation. We used to have the mediation of Sudan, before it split to South Sudan in Machakos. So it, as a country, we have been very significant about peace and security within the region. However, things have changed during this presidency. Then we need to question what's wrong about the presidency. Because these people have been around even before. M23 used to be here before. But you see, even the abduction of opposition leaders, members of the press of other countries who feel that this is the city of refuge, getting kidnapped, extraditions of people who feel like Nairobi is a safe haven for them to evade persecution from their country. Then we need to question what's the stand of this government, because the head of state is the driver of the foreign policy. It's his government. We might believe in everything, but this is his government. He runs the government. He needs to tell us what agenda is propelling. Because ultimately, as a citizen, I cannot, he is our mouthpiece. Like,
you can make a lot of noise, but nobody will hear
but
you.
he is our mouthpiece. When I make a comment here, the president of Rwanda it won't hold any waters. But the president, when he makes just a comment, even his silence means a lot in the international.
Let me ask. Rwanda is definitely benefiting from DRC stealing, and I use that word, stealing the resources.
True.
Uganda is benefiting from the DRC together with Rwanda stealing the resources. What is Kenya benefiting in the DRC?
Please separate the countries and the people. You know, the M23 rebels are Tutsis.
Yes.
Kagame is a Tutsi.
Yes.
Museveni is a Tutsi.
Yes.
You know, Museveni is a Rwandese.
Yes.
Actually, the conflict in between the Great region revolves within those countries, and a lot of the most of the leaders in most of the people in government in those countries know exactly why people are having conflicts in that region.
It's the resources.
There is another interested party now in that same mineral.
Yes.
That's why he's an ally in what is happening. But Fred, very quickly, I wanted to say something very quickly.
Yes.
During President Uhuru Kenyatta's regime, there are some two very key incidents that happened, but Kenyans didn't quite capture them. At one time, President Kenyatta was to travel abroad, but he cut his trip midway and came back. Secondly, at one time, President Kenyatta was in Kisumu to sort of monitor a development project, and actually drove to the airport. But while on the airport, just before he boards the plane, he turns around and almost on his own drives out of the airport, leaving the entire security intelligence, shocked at what is happening, because presidential trips are planned way before in advance, and they knew that we are headed to Nairobi. And then there are some allegations came up that there are two things that were supposed to happen. One is that somebody was either trying to plan on how to blow up the president's plane somewhere in Yemen, in the Middle East, because they had gone to Dubai, and I think from there they were supposed to, he was going somewhere in Europe, but you see the flight path was supposed to go through Yemen, and so they cancelled the trip and came back home.
It actually created a lot of debate.
Yes.
And came back home. And for the one in Kisumu, then the allegations were, these were allegations, and the reason why the president cut the trip immediately at the airport is that they'd received intelligence that there was a suicide bomber that was supposed to, the president is there greeting people at the airport, was supposed to blow up with him, and the timing was that it should be in an opposition area so that you're able to sort of cover it up. Those were just allegations. Later on, there was a revelation that there's a bunch of Kenyans who left Kenya, flew to Dubai, then from Dubai took a private jet, a chartered private jet to Khartoum, where then they drove to Darfur to seek some allies from that particular area. Now, Darfur is a war-torn zone.
Yes.
Everybody in Darfur is a fighter, including those who are not fighting, because your state of mind is of, if you're living and every day there are bullets, even if you're not the one holding the guns, you have a bullet mind. You understand? You're a fighter. The fights could be different. This could be an emotional fight, but you're fighting. So anybody that goes to Darfur with a certain mission. So there's a link between some Kenyans with the Darfur militia that is there. And that's why I'm not shocked with the kind of relationships that are happening between Sudan and here. Because there's an existing government that they've been trying to put together after the fall of al-Bashir. But these guys of Rapid Support Forces have been rebels since. And even today as they speak, they are rebels. And their base is in Darfur. Mohammed Hamdan, I've told you, is a born and bred camel seller from Darfur. A vigilante that was just minding his business until somebody said, we have a small job for you. And that job morphed into what it became. And when he was able to successfully then deliver for the president, he cut him off some deals. And that's why he's being accused to be one of the biggest gold sellers, because that's what they have over there. So Fred, one time you asked a question here, and that's what I wanted to answer. You said, what is the consequences of these actions? Two things. One, we are putting our country into a serious national security danger. Because the guys in Sudan and South Sudan, they don't joke about war. They are in war. You know, Kenya is a civilian state. Our president doesn't walk with guns openly. You understand? He's a civilian president. He gets elected and actually has intentions to live after 5 or 10 years. In those countries, Salva Kiir has been there for 15 years. They've never had elections.
And they are active
military members. You understand? So Fred, it puts us in a very serious security situation, because unfortunately we border them. You know, we border Somalia, we border Ethiopia, we border South Sudan, we border Uganda. You understand? And it means anytime they have access to the country. It's not like they have people here, they are representative here. You know, out of the 1 million refugees that we have in this country, 3/4 of them are actually Congolese, Sudanese, and Somalians. Isn't it? And you remember the decision of Kenya to go to Kismayo, what it costed us. Every single time we had grenades all over. And the only thing is because you went into Kismayo. You understand? So that has never left. They are still always roaming around and try to find an option to always scatter us. So that would remain a permanent situation until maybe the day we leave Somalia. Because Kenya was the very first one to go into Somalia before now it morphed into the mission that is there in Somalia. And that is going to be the same case on the other side. You can imagine if Somalia alone can terrorize us the way they did, what happens when you have now 3-4 more other opponents? It puts us in a terrible condition. That's one. But two, economically, is that Congo was becoming a good marketplace for Kenya because of the size of its economy. 100 million people, Fred. You just need 1% of the market and you're a billionaire. Whatever you're selling. You could even just take Ngwashe and or you can take whatever you're selling from Nyandarua and take it to one province in Congo and you're a billionaire because of the size of the population. Same to Ethiopia. So for me, what I wanted to say is that we have two serious consequences. One is one of the national security, which is a real danger. In fact, the most scary one. The other markets we could choose to make other friends. But for that was very scary because we are totally surrounded with countries which are at war. You wouldn't want to have a president who's provoking more other countries to make Kenya a target or Kenyans target. You saw what happened in Kinshasa. They immediately went to the Kenyan embassy and attacked it. That was a response to what was happening here. Now next time it will be they just hear your accent and say this is Kenyan. You understand? So those could be two of the most important threats that this president maybe is not paying attention, which is extremely unfortunate.
Well, the implications are already out.
The implications are already out. Oh, you're talking about the AUC.
Yeah, that's just one of them. Another one, we've seen the countries withdrawing their ambassadors from Kenya. Sudan recently recalled theirs. The Congolese one also recalled. So right now, we don't have any diplomatic ties with those two countries because our ambassador is always the link between this country and the other country. So once you recall our ambassador and you send back theirs, it means that you have cut ties with those countries. So right now we have two countries that we are not in any diplomatic relation with them. Another one, like my friend has said, security implications, and that's what we should be very worried about as Kenyans, because our security should be guaranteed by the state, and now the state is the one which is talking wars and other things outside there, which will always have ramifications back at home. Because when yesterday the Sudanese government brought about a strongly worded statement, they warned Kenya of dire consequences for meddling in their internal affairs. You know, dire consequences are not embargoes.
Yes.
They are not about abusing us like as our country is led by politicians.
They're not tariffs.
People,
They're not tariffs.
no tariffs. People who only talk on top of cars. But these other countries are led by military generals. So when they say about consequences, they are talking about military consequences. Because in this situation, we are inviting other countries to wage war on us. And this wars, once they are waged, is the Kenyan people who will suffer. The Kenyan economy will suffer. Because war is never good business to the common people. It's only profitable to those who sell arms and those who have found a profitable way of conducting war. So, going forward, the foreign policy has to change, and this has to change from the Foreign Affairs Ministry. The president needs to listen to professionals in the ministry, and he should also stop rewarding his political friends positions in the Foreign Affairs Ministry, such as ambassadors and directors in the ministry, people who have no idea about what is supposed to be done. Because nations don't just engage like in a day, like friends. It's a process, a diplomatic process which takes place. Because even before a president meets another president, there are delegations which have met back and forth to actualize that. It's not something one-off that you just decide and make this policy. So going forward, the president should at least make sure that our diplomatic responses to issues surrounding us are measured. Yes, they should be measured, because today it could be Hemeti, but you don't know what will happen tomorrow. He might even be out of the picture. Then how will our country be conducting business with Sudan?
Okay, your closing comments.
I think my closing comments will be, see, when President Kibaki came into power, he saw that the peace talks were more successful in Sudan. He sent a delegation led by President Moi, and he never interfered with that, with all the deliberations that were made in and out of those conferences. He left that President Moi do his job. Later, General Sumbeyo and Kalonzo, when he was then the Vice President and at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I think that was a good precedence, that when you're president, you know your utterances means a lot. That you donate those responsibility to people of almost the same stature, but to them, while they are talking, you will never interfere. So you will be putting your country in a safe space. But the current president, think he needs to change his tactics on matters foreign relations. Let experts do their job. Just deal with the internal affair of the country. It will work well for him.
Yes. Your closing comment.
You know, Fred, after the late President Moi terrorized our country for 24 years, and President Kibaki came in, he did one big mistake. He forgot to punish those who had terrorized our country for 24 years, so that it can serve as a lesson for future presidents who were not to behave the way President Moi behaved. And just hoping and praying that Kenyans, because it's only Kenyans who can contain this president, since we do not have any politician that can be able to do that, and that when that time comes when this president is to be held into account, we must do so openly, like the way the Romans did to Jesus Christ. You know, they put him on the cross. The reason why they crucified him on the cross for everybody to see was to serve as a lesson, so that he pays for his action here on earth before he goes to heaven. I'm just hoping we can find a way of making this president pay pay for his action here on earth before he goes in heaven. Because that is when other leaders can begin to understand why it is important to value a country and its people. Fred, the actions of this president can lead us into war. And the saddest part is that the people like African leaders like President William Ruto do so because they know they can get the fastest private jet out of the country. That's why I always get tired of seeing these warlords who are in Nairobi entertaining, enjoying a very luxurious lifestyle while their countries are fighting. The real Sudanese are in Sudan managing with the tough situations. It's the warlords that are living in Nairobi.
Yes.
The real Congolese are in Kivu and they're struggling with the tough conditions that are happening over there. It's the warlords that are in some hotel in Nairobi. If one thing that is going to be very key in the next election is that we're going to put a migration policy on the ballot for Kenyans to decide. And that on 10th of August, the first order of business is to deport all these warlords and everybody that is operating here, and all these peace missions to be taken to the countries of where they are supposed to be. If it's a peacekeeping mission on Sudan, let it be done in Khartoum. If it's a peacekeeping, so that those who are talking about Congo should go and feel how Congo is, to know how urgent it is. Looking at how people have been killed in the last 2 weeks, it's tragic.
Brief, very brief.
Okay, I have just a closing remark. I'll say this to our Foreign Affairs Ministry in matters of international relations. It's not about who shouts the loudest, but he who whispers to the right ears that will get support from the international community on our national interest. Thank you, Fred.
Beautifully said. And with that, we got to bring down the curtains on this show. But you know, it's very, very important that you and I become engaged in the things that are happening in this country, because I don't have another country to run to. Majority of Kenyans cannot afford plane tickets to run out of this country. So we have to be engaged in some of the things that are happening in this country. We have to lend our voices without insulting, without being disrespectful. We have to lend our voice to the agendas of this country, because after all is said and done, the government that is in place is supposed to be acting for us, as us. But if it's not doing that, then you have every right to raise your voice and say, hey, excuse me, Mr. President, on this one, I don't think this is what we would do. But let's do everything peaceful. Let's ensure this is the country that we are going to bequeath our children. So we have to ensure that we take care of this country. And our leaders lead us. As in, that's what leadership is all about. You're supposed to influence us towards achieving positive objectives. And if you can do that, then everybody will remember you. That's why we still remember the late President Mwai Kibaki. Because when we compare what he did and what has been done or has been done, then he stands very high. So please do the right thing. And religious leaders, you're the conscience of this country. Let's hear what you have to say about what is happening in our country, even the foreign policy. With that, bring down the curtains on the show. Remember, at 11, we have the women of the kingdom coming in. They'll be talking matters kingdom and how they affect the women. Do have yourself, daughters of the kingdom, do have yourself a lovely morning.